Hey there, thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Bobby Jones. Today's interview is the second in a two-part discussion with Shiro Bergbauer. And today we focus more on the business side of her life coaching business. Enjoy. Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. Join me for some honest, unscripted discussions with other CRNAs who are transforming their financial lives. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today. And now, on with the show. Because I wonder how distraction comes into play there. Because eating is more of a symptom of these emotions, or I mean, it could be anything else. You know, like it could, you know, like I go shopping on Amazon or whatever because I'm feeling useless and I need to feel useful, whatever the case is. You know, but how much does distraction work with those emotions or against them? You know, and it's very dependent on the emotions that people are feeling, but how do you work with things that are distractions versus things that are, you know, those really unhealthy coping mechanisms?
They're all unhealthy coping mechanisms, whether it's a distraction. Like I even tell my clients, like, overworking and over caring for other people is still a way of buffering negative emotions, right? So some people overwork because they want to avoid feeling bored, right? And it sounds so altruistic, like I'm going to help all the people. And then they become resentful, they get compassion fatigue, and they're like, I don't want to help anybody. So one of the terms we use in life coaching is buffering, and it's using something, going back to the human motivational triad, to avoid pain. So it's using over shopping, overeating, over drinking, over caring, overspending, anything that takes your mind and also gives you a dopamine hit, right? Because we're like little dopamine hamsters. We're like, give me more dopamine, give me dopamine. And we don't realize like, oh, you can actually create your own dopamine by going for a walk, right? Like your brain's like, no, the only thing we could do right now is distract ourselves, go on Amazon, buy the thing. And then you're like, why are there all these boxes outside my house? And one of the things I say jokingly to like and I did a reel about this recently, is it is more important to invest in like your brain than to invest in like remodeling your kitchen, right? Because for many of us, doing a new thing is like we're chasing that high. And we never get it because it's a temporary hit. And then you get the new kitchen and you're like, oh, okay, I'm still annoyed.
It is very difficult to just sit with your emotions. I mean, it is, you know,
it's not easy work.
Yeah. So, and then the question becomes like, well, how long do you sit with that before moving on to the next emotion or moving on to something that is in general, like, you know, more healthy or beneficial to you?
Yeah. So what I usually think about is like, if, for example, if you're feeling sadness, and I'm very open to this with my coaching clients, like there have been times of intense sadness in my life where I still showed up and coached my clients because it was literally like, I could just tell my body, I know you're sad. I know you're scared. It's okay. Like my body is now like my little baby where I'm like, I know how you feel, but we can still go out in the world. The lion's not going to eat us, right? The stick outside the cave is not a snake. It's just a stick. And we go out in the world. And that's what I was talking about, the duality of those emotions. Like I can still use the resource. Like one of the best things I learned is like using the thought of like my daughter and my husband. And when I think of them, I feel like joy. And I'm like, oh, I can be sad, but joy is also available for me. And so you know, it's not like catharsis and you sit there and you process the emotion over and over, but I think it's normalizing, like feeling our feelings. And one of the things that I share about is like, I think coaching has been so easy for me to understand because of my understanding of the autonomic nervous system and just all the different hormones that our body produce. And so when you think about the autonomic nervous system, one of the best ways we can regulate ourselves is by going into that vagal, like our dorsal vagal, and like really getting into calm and peace. And we can tune into like our vagal brake, which is something we learn about when we learn about how it works on patient. We give drugs to do these things, right? But we have that available to us. So when you're feeling super terrified, you can do breath work, right? You can literally like tapping, which is emotional freedom technique. It's gotten so popular because it's something you can do, especially if you're not one to focus and meditate. You know, we have different focus points that you can use and different things you can say to yourself. And it literally like just slows down your brain. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on as I've grown, and you're talking about like what am I learning, I have just gone into like little like rabbit holes, and the current rabbit hole I'm in is like somatic stress work, and I'm actually taking a certification course for somatic stress release, because we carry a lot of stress in our body, we carry a lot of trauma in our body, and I think the better we can have an understanding of how to listen to our own bodies, for them to be like, oh, I am not like happy right now. And you keep taking me to these activities, you keep taking me to work, and you keep showing up for other people. And now I'm going to be sick for a week.
Yeah.
And our bodies are like, yeah, no, I'm done. I'm shutting down. And we have to start listening to our bodies. We do such a terrible job as healthcare providers.
Well, there are a lot of pressures not to. I mean, you know, okay, my body's telling me that I need, you know, an hour lunch break. Well, here you go. You got 20 minutes. You're not going to get it. You know, like, oh, my body's telling me that I really should take a little nap right now. No, you can't really do that at work. You know, so, I mean, there's all kinds of things that are pressures there. Yeah, my body's saying I need to sleep in today. No, cases start at 7.
You gotta go to work.
You better get over here right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are a lot of production pressures involved in our career, and it's hard to avoid that. But
so I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to disagree with you there for a second.
All right, let's do it.
Especially for you, like you've been out of practice for 3 years, right?
Well, yeah, I don't count.
And here's the thing. Well, no, because here's the thing. Everything we do is a choice, right? One of my favorite like authors, and she's like a guru in self-help. Her name is Byron Katie. She says, we lie horizontal, we sit, we stand. That's all we have to do. That's it. Everything else we do is a choice. So is it important that we put food on our tables? Absolutely. Is it important that we go to work and take care of our patients? Absolutely. Do we have to do it to our death? No. Right?
No, absolutely not.
We have to start making choices, and sometimes selfish choices, right? I gave up a very cush pension filled position to go out in the world and create this business and work 1099 so I could be fully present for my daughter. So I get it. It's like choices have to be made. But sometimes I think we hold ourselves in like, I have to do this, or I have to stay here. There's not a choice, but it is all a choice. Like I even tell my moms, like, do you know you don't have to take care of your kid? You don't. And we have evidence in the world why it's true, right? There's women who have a child, can't take care of the child, leave the baby at the fire station. There's other women who do drugs and don't take care of the baby. So we don't have to, we choose to.
Yeah.
It's a choice. So same thing, if your body is telling you to listen, you don't have to indulge it and give it an hour of rest, but you can at least indulge it and take deep breaths, or, you know, try to like meditate, or just try to go for a walk, go for a 5-minute walk. Because I think sometimes we're holding off for this one thing to happen so we can go out in the world and take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And if there's anything the pandemic taught us, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, we get very comfortable in our own little bubbles and in our jobs and stuff. I mean, I know so many people that they were scared to leave the place that they had worked at, you know, for the last 10 years, because this other place over here might be different, you know, and but they were clearly unhappy where they were at. And it's like, okay, well, then, you know, you do have the choice to go and change something. You can go to find another job. And I've told people that before, that like, well, if you're not happy with the job you have, you know, you can change that. And you know, so, I mean, yes, there is a lot of personal choice that's involved with creating our own happiness and creating our own
Mhm.
surroundings, the people that we surround ourselves with, all those kinds of things. So, no, I do agree with you there, and I appreciate you bringing up that point. But okay, got to get back on track here. Okay,
Yeah, get back on track.
back on track. So I want to get to some of this nitty gritty here. So, you've been doing this for over a year now. You figured out some of the financial stuff involved, the cost of certifications, the cost of any overhead that you might have, which doesn't sound like it would be a ton, but you do have a podcast. So you got, time that you spend on social media and all these kinds of things that take up time, cost money, all those types of things. So, what specifically are the types of services that you offer, and how do you go about pricing those services to make sure that, not only are you being compensated enough for your time, but that the people that you're serving are getting exactly what it is that they need?
Yeah. So one of my biggest, my business ethos is to over deliver, right?
Mm-hmm.
Overserve, over deliver, give value. And it starts from just the value that I give for free. And I'm so grateful, and I have to give a shout out to CRNA moms. I'm so grateful for that community, because that community helped me just step up in my role and establish myself as an expert of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people ask questions and I come on there and I answer them. But going back to the business expenses, the cost of certification, the cost of Zoom, it's a very low overhead business if you think about it, right?
It is.
Just to keep the doors open, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, and I'm sure you've talked about this with some of your other guests, is, when we come from an employed position, we don't really know our value.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, you think your value is your hourly pay.
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking at value so differently when I opened a business, because I was like, no, I'm not just valuable for the hour that I'm there. I'm valuable because if I don't show up, there's a problem. I'm valuable because I get to keep this person alive. And I know this is not the amount of money you're getting back from the insurance company. So my value is definitely higher. So I had to step into business with that awareness of, what is the cost of not changing your marriage? What is the cost of hating being a parent, right? What is the cost of being overwhelmed? And I priced my offer to where it's a hell yes to my clients, and it's like a no-brainer. I over deliver. I'm 100% of that. And so that was kind of how I came up with my pricing. And I started out coaching 3 months at a time. And what I realized is, at the 3-month mark, we were just gaining momentum. Right. And so I changed my entire offer to 6 months, one-on-one coaching. My clients coach with me for 24 weeks, 1 hour a week. And so I've changed my pricing, obviously, over time, just to reflect my skills that I've learned. But I honestly feel like it's such a hell yes for my clients. And also the value that I give for free, through my podcast, answering questions on CRNA moms, on my own group, that has built up. And I have definitely reinvested in the business over the last year, just going back, getting more, like I was saying, the somatic certification, joining masterminds, getting coached myself. Because even as a coach, I still want somebody to kind of question my BS. Why are you saying that about yourself? I'm like, oh, nobody's booking a consult. And my coach will be like, you literally just had 4 consults last week.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a lot of reinvesting. The one thing I want to touch on, and you kind of talked about it a little earlier, is our perception of failure as CRNAs. And I actually did an episode where I talked about entrepreneurship, because I'm seeing a lot of more CRNAs going into entrepreneurship. We come from a field where failing is fatal.
Yeah.
Right. And so we come into business expecting success. And the first drop of uncertainty, we're like, oh my God, this might not work out. And we panic. And I was saying, how my first course was a huge flop. Had I not kept going, I wouldn't be where I am today. But we're conditioned in anesthesia. If you fail, go back to plan A, right? Go back there because it's available. And I think we're in a place of privilege that we can go back to a 6-figure job, but it's also an unsafe cushion in terms of you don't have a lot to lose. So it might keep you playing small, because you're like, I can always go back into anesthesia.
Yeah. Well, you don't take as big a risk as you might be needed to take to actually become successful.
Yeah. And so it's you can play small. And the other thing is, because we come from making so much money as CRNAs, we might undermine small amounts of money, right? Like we might undermine, like I remember my first package was 3 months of coaching with me for $1,500. And I was like, oh my God, it takes so long to sell $1,500, right? I could make that in a day.
Yeah.
But it has to, like, I had to realize anesthesia money is not coaching money. And I'm not trying to stay in anesthesia forever.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to build that business. And so I see that in the communities that I'm in, like moms will be like, oh, I took this aesthetics course and it's not kicking off. And I'm like, be willing to fail. Like you have to be willing to fail. And the only agreement my husband and I made was I could keep investing in the business. I could invest my time, but we just weren't going to like take a pay cut, so to speak. Right. And so it worked out because I was able to go all in with my business without expecting it to be funding my life, so to speak. And I think that's another big mistake people make. It's like your business is a baby. And then 2 months in, you're like, baby, why aren't you going to work? Like, why aren't you paying the electric bill? Right.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been a whole new lesson of understanding business, understanding money, understanding like, even though I have money in the bank, I can't keep pulling from my personal resources to put into my business. Like I have to invest in the business from the business.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And you mentioned something there though. You know, you're not looking to do anesthesia forever. So do you think that this could ever take over, you know, as your plan A?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so follow up, how is that lifestyle different from being a CRNA? Aren't you like on call all the time or whatever with your you know, with coaching or, you know, how's that work?
I have very serious boundaries with my coaching business. Like I communicate with my clients. I'm very good at communicating with my clients, but I have a lot, like my boundaries around my weekends, my boundaries around my non-coaching time are very clear. My boundaries in general, which is one of the things I coach on, are very intact. Like my phone never rings because my phone's always on do not disturb. And so long term, I see this growing into a situation where I'd still do some one-on-one coaching, but my goal ultimately, which is a 5-year plan, is to end up launching a program. And I've even thought about the name for it. It's going to be a community for CRNA moms with monthly trainings, weekly group coaching, just community for people to come together, learn from each other, but me like using years of experience of coaching women. Because the other thing people don't realize is you're not the only one going through all the drama, like everybody else is. And, you know, when we think about shame resilience, which is something Brene Brown talks about, the idea that when you go to somebody and they're like, oh, me too, it just takes away the shame out of issues like, you know, marital conflict, lack of intimacy in marriage, mom guilt, burnout, overwhelm, you know, imposter syndrome. And so what I want to build is community of women around a program that will keep just like regenerating. And so that will look like, you know, weekly coaching, one-on-one coaching, meeting with my teams, and having like a regular 8 to 4 practice. The one caveat to my own practice is that because of my clients' schedules, I do have like weird like scheduling as far as I coach in the evenings, just because that's when my moms are home. But I also understand how my moms are home during the week, right? Because most CRNAs work either 3-4 day weeks. And so changing that over time, I see it transitioning, but I definitely have like big dreams for this coaching business. And I also have a goal of, you know, like doing speaking engagements and just like really showing up as a thought leader, especially for stress management and burnout management, relationship management for CRNAs. That is where I see this going. So it's kind of multifaceted, but because of the experiences I'm having coaching women, I think I can now start to position myself as I'm an expert of this topic. I can talk about self-care with my eyes closed. Yeah. So I think the business revenue will definitely come from both the coaching and just public engagements.
Yeah, no, I like it because it is nice to have multiple sources of income coming in. So I think that's a great plan. I think you're really thinking it through. And of course there are other healthcare professions too. I mean, there's plenty of nurse practitioners, there's, you know, pharmacists, the list goes on for people, and in particular working moms in these healthcare, you know, fields that can use help like this that
absolutely
need
I actually do have some clients that are not CRNAs. I have one pharmacist, I have an RN, an ICU RN who we coach through last year when she had applied to CRNA school and not gotten accepted. And this year she just got accepted. And I was telling her, you're going to be such an amazing anesthesia student because your mind is so well managed. And one of my clients actually mentors CRNAs, SRNAs and people applying to school. And we've both talked about, like, I wish we had life coaching in school and like right after school when you start making money and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Yeah. So we're really like trying to spread the word on that.
Yeah. It's a total mindset shift when you,
absolutely,
you know, go into anesthesia school, but, you know, specifically when you come out and you're making more money than you've ever made. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot, you know, that now is within reach, but is also like, you know, your lifestyle is going to change. And so,
and we don't talk enough about success and tolerance, right? Like, you know, we kind of have a thermostat about like how much money we think we can make. And when you hit that level, especially when you're fresh out of school, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And you see it a lot in new grads. They go out, they buy the new house and they buy the new car. And it's like, oh my God, what is happening? But it's literally actually a mind thing that they're like, I can't have this much money. This can't be true.
Yeah.
And so I coach even my moms who have been out for a while, I coach them on that, like success and tolerance. You get a job promotion and a new set of problems begins. And it's like, why are you self-sabotaging? And it's the idea, like, you just can't tolerate a certain level of success.
Yeah. No, I think that's fascinating. This has been so incredibly informative.
Thank you.
You know, I really appreciate your time and the effort that you put into what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. And I want to give people a chance to reach out to you with any questions or comments. You know, we mentioned your podcast, Stethoscopes to Swaddles. And but I want to give people another chance to get a hold of you. How can they do that?
Sure. They can email me at hello@stethoscopes2swaddles.com. Facebook, I'm under Shiro Bergbauer. I have a public profile. And then Instagram at stethoscopes.2.swaddles. Really, I'm everywhere. And then my podcast is a great place to catch me. I always tell my clients whose husbands are like, I don't know about this life coaching thing. I always tell them, have them listen to an episode or two, and then they can see my style and then they can, you know, decide. But, you know, one of the things, Bobby, which I really appreciate, just even you having this platform, is many of us, especially after the pandemic, have looked for opportunities to do something different. And one of the things I love about being a coach is it encapsulates everything that I love about anesthesia, but I have follow through, right? So like one of my clients who was literally on the verge of filing for a divorce because she was unhappily married, but there was nothing major going on in her marriage. And to hear her say to me, you know, after 6 months of coaching, like my husband and I are better connected. Like we have more intimacy in our relationship. We argue better. Like, I'm like, that is like an anesthetic. You get to see the patient, like, and they're like, that was the best epidural ever. Right. But I get to experience that and I get to walk the walk with them. And it's definitely a work in progress, because as a woman, it's very easy for me to, what do we call in coaching language, to jump in the pool with them and be like, oh my God, I can't believe your husband's doing that. But as a coach, I really like hold space for them, and I'm willing to risk the relationship so that they can get to where they want to go. And I always tell my clients, you don't hire me for you today. You're hiring me for the future version of yourself. And that person is like if you're a CRNA, you have so much potential as a human being that you have no reason not to be living a 5-star life. And I'm not talking about luxury, just like a life in which you have, like, you're not yelling at your kids, yelling at your husband, getting mad at people at work, you know, a life where you're overwhelmed. Like, you have every right to be living a life of fulfillment. And I think last but not least, what I want to say is, we have this disillusion of when we arrive somewhere, then we'll be happy. And I think the biggest breakthrough that my clients have is that their happiness is available right now. It's not when you get the promotion or when you make the money. It's like, you can be happy now, but you have to be willing to see why your brain is telling you otherwise.
Yeah. Destination addiction. I had it big time, just throughout the first 30 something years of my life. And so I still struggle with it today, because you know, it's easy to fall back into old patterns.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's like,
I'll be happy
I'm here. Why am I not happy? Yeah.
Oh, and that's exactly what happened with me. I got a year out of anesthesia school, and it's like, what in the world is going on? My my marriage doesn't seem right and I'm not happy. What is going on here? And that was a real turning point in my life. But Shiro, it's been great having you here today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
This is such a, like, life coaching is just such a personal experience. And
it is,
I'm excited to see that so many healthcare professionals like yourself are really discovering this field and embracing it and taking it on as something to, like you said, it's about the follow through. Like, we don't always see the end result in what we do in our anesthesia career, because somebody goes to the PACU and then they go to, their place on the floor and you don't ever see them again.
You don't see them again. Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity to have that kind of follow through that I think we all really got into the profession for. We wanted to help people. And now you get to see the end result of that. So
absolutely. And I will say, I loved when Suzanne Jagger came on and she talked about her life coach. And I was like, I'm so glad this is becoming a thing, because people thought business coaches, but no, you have to have somebody redirect your brain, because the brain is very tricky. I think about the human brain as like a toddler with a Sharpie. It's just everywhere, writing on walls, right? And you have to understand that and then tune into your prefrontal cortex. And for anybody that's in anesthesia that's even wondered if they want to be a life coach, we totally get the science behind the brain. And if you love people, if you love holding space for people, which many of us do, because we're basically 99% empaths in this profession, do it. Contact me. I'll walk you through my own journey. I actually had just recorded a podcast episode where I talked about my own evolution as a coach, because I think it's important to just I'm not a special unicorn. I just had a passion, but I laugh now because my paternal grandparents were teachers and my maternal grandparents were entrepreneurs. And I'm like, well played, grandparents. Well played.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
I'm doing both now. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a lot of, service oriented on one side of the family, and I've got some entrepreneurship on the other. It just works out, So, well, Shiro, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Bobby.
It took a long time for me to realize some of the things that Shiro has already figured out. She alluded to how she would compare her hours spent to her CRNA salary to work out her pricing structure at first. However, she discovered that taking a W-2 mindset into the entrepreneurial world is kind of like fitting a round peg in a square hole. We all place value on our time, but it is really our most precious resource. And when we begin to shift our mindset, it's easier to more properly value our time, energy, and output. Shiro did the hard self-work in the beginning, and that allowed her to begin to more fully understand her own self-worth and the true value that she brings to others. That's it for this week's show. If you'd like to reach out to Shiro for more info, make sure you check out our show notes for her contact information. This is Bobby Jones signing off, and as always, be safe and take care of each other out there. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On-Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On-Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.